Hey guys, it's Penelope in London. We're looking at Mercury Retrograde that's coming up in a few days from the 30th of January 2021 and January 30th at 26 degrees. So I'm showing you my chart, and I'm just going to do a little bit of reading explanation. This is purely on the sign of Mercury and Mercury Retrograde. So what you're looking for on your chart, if you can see that I have my AC here, Scorpio rising, and I'll show you solar fire in a moment. But if you go to astro.com and you put in your birth details, you'll come up with this chart, and you want your birth time. And on the inside of the wheel are all of your natal planets. And then on the outside of the wheel, we have the transit planets. And the transit planets right now, we can see Mercury. So if we come up here, my Mercury at birth is 23 Taurus. And Mercury right now is 23 of Aquarius, and it's going to go retrograde when it reaches 26 degrees. And you can see here that will be on the 30th of January 30th. And what you can see here, that's actually square to my Mercury at the moment, and then it's squaring my Mars, and then it will go retrograde. So it's going to pass back over and do that again for me. So this symbolism, Mercury square to Mars, can make one a little bit irritable, and that's okay because we're human beings. But at least with astrology, we can see what we're feeling. So I've been irritable the last couple of days, and that's okay, being human. But the chart is reflecting my feelings. So that's helpful to know because we can analyze ourselves better, and that's the whole point of astrology. So some people were born with Mercury retrograde. My Mercury was direct when I was born. But if your Mercury is retrograde, I'm going to explain that. And you can then tie that into the meaning of what Mercury is when it is retrograde. So as an example, what we have is that we've also got the moon at the moment in the sign of Cancer. And if we look at what Mercury means in the sign of Aquarius, if you were born with Mercury in the sign of Aquarius, it's basically that you don't care what you write as long as you can write. And these people, it's about foreign languages. They learn easily, and they can flirt with abstract ideas and scientific stuff and predictions. And, you know, it's to do with intuition. It's to do with the higher mind. It's Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius. And Aquarius is the 11th house traditionally. It's where the mind can go through a process that's connected to the universal mind. So they can perceive other things, you know, and people in a different way. And Mercury feels at home in air. So this is quite interesting because the 3 Mercury retrogrades we have this year are all in air signs. So it's going to happen 3 times this year. Sometimes it's 4 times a year, but this time it's 3 times through 2021. And as it moves, it will hit different planets, and it will aspect different, you know, it's going to aspect in my chart a particular way. But then we also have the collective chart, which throws a different light onto things. Mercury in the 11th house represents a connection. It's to do with socializing. It's to do with our mind being versatile and broad views and diverse thinking. And it's unbiased and impersonal and friendly. And it's also where we're willing to communicate and exchange ideas, and, you know, of diverse origins and social status as well. And it's also where we can be unusual and unconventional, which is probably good at this time. You know, we need to be a bit unconventional and do a bit of think differently. And it's also where it's about our friends' opinions and ideas, and also what brings us joy and pleasure, because the 11th house is about hopes and dreams as well in astrology. And the 11th house, the Uranus part of it, is to do with past life, you know, it's or past very deep imprints from the past. It's like so that's another thing to do with Uranus, and very quick thinking. And if you can see that my 3rd house is actually in Aquarius, so, you know, I come up with flashes of insight often, and that's my personality with regard to my thinking. You can see that Aquarius. And people who are born with Mercury retrograde are it's an evolutionary thing over many lifetimes. And Mercury, when Mercury goes retrograde, people feel more at home. And that, I've noticed that with friends who've got Mercury retrograde. When Mercury is retrograde, they're in a happier place. I feel quite comfortable with Mercury retrograde as well. And it may be because I've got the Gemini sun and Gemini moon, and it feels like at home to me when it goes retrograde. For some reason, I feel quite settled with it. But for different people, it brings up different things. And also it's going to bring up different things depending on what house it's happening in for you. And it's about being indiscriminate with information, because souls that have Mercury retrograde at birth have basically already collected a lot of information, and they don't want confusion, so they have to be selective. And they can, it's where they can rebel and reject. That's what a retrograde is. It's where we rebel and reject, and we throw out what we don't need. And it's also where we rewind, review, and release and slow down. And clearly, the thing that I hear a lot of astrologers say as well, what we don't want to do with Mercury whilst it's retrograde, buy any big purchases, electrical items, or do any purchasing of flights and things like that, travel. And it's also going to affect our technology, and very much so with it being in Aquarius. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out in the collective chart over the next 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and it's going to remain in the sign. I'll show you on Solarfire how long it's going to be in the sign of Aquarius as well. And the retrograde is where the soul needs to orient to information that is specific and particular for its own reasons. So we can see that happens when we look at a retrograde in our own chart. We'll zoom into something that's unfinished, maybe particular. We're going to rewind and review. And the nature of Mercury is to externalize things. And, it's also, I'm just looking here what I've got written down. When Mercury goes retrograde, collectively, we are under the impulse, where it's basically pointing towards, Mercury retrograde will point towards Jupiter as well. So Mercury rules Gemini, and it also rules the sign of Virgo. But when we look at Mercury, if we look at Gemini here, we've also got that the opposite is Sagittarius, and that's Jupiter. So the opposite to Gemini, for instance, would be the higher mind, and it would be the bigger picture. And also Mercury rules the left brain, and it also rules, as I've just said, Gemini and Virgo. And we've also got the left brain thinking. And with this, the sign rules over friendships. With Mercury, it's to do with friendships, collaborations. It's the future, it's a technology. And it's also where we want to not fall out with people, with misunderstandings and disagreements with colleagues or social groups. We want to look at how we're interacting. And it's a time to be aware of our technical devices, without a doubt, and making sure that we've backed things up, and that we check our communications before we hit the send button, for instance. And also making sure that we got like our Zoom meetings up to date, like downloading things and just being organized, because we can get things a bit wrong during that time. It's also already in its shadow phase, so we can also see this playing out generally at this time. So now the beginning, and then it's incredible when I see this, like I find, I don't want to tempt it, but every Mercury retrograde I have a printer thing go on, or something goes on, or something like that. So now what I'm going to do is change over to Solarfire. So what you want to do is look at where in your own chart you want to look at where 26 degrees of Aquarius is, and then you want to know that it's going to go back to 11 degrees of Aquarius, and on February the 21st, and then it will go direct on February the 21st. So let me show you how that works. So this is the chart of the moment, and I'm going to go by days. So we can see currently that we've got Aries here. That's the beginning of the chart. And I'm not going to tell you what's going on up here today. I think we're going to concentrate on this Mercury. So we can see, you know, the planets. We've got 2 in Capricorn, then we've got Aquarius, and there's our Mercury here at 25 degrees. So let's go ahead. So we got 1 day, 2, 3, and there's it stationed. Can you see the little S there? That's station. And then it's gone RX, and then we're going to watch it go backwards, and then we'll check what day that is. You'll be able to see it up here. So 1, 2, 3. We're going to go to the 11th, and it's going back. 14th, or right, 16th of February. It's not going backwards, it's going forwards. See, there you go, Mercury retrograde station. This is the 20th. It's going to station at 11 degrees. And it's interesting because it's going to go back towards Saturn, and then it's going to go over Jupiter again, and we'll see what happens here. And then 11 degrees, and it goes direct. So how long is it in the sign of Aquarius for? And then it goes direct. And then it's 0 degrees. 15th of March, it will move into the sign of Pisces, and that's very interesting. And Mercury in Pisces is something else I have to tell you. So that's what's going on. If you want to know what it means in the houses, I mean, for me, it's going to be in my 3rd house, so that's about communication. We would then also look what Mercury is doing as it's moving through. We would look at aspects. And if we actually do go back to today's date, let's go back. And we're going to go back to the 26th of, I love solar fire. So 26. So we can sort of see what it's going to do. So it's going to, you know, there's nothing going on at that point in particular, really. Then we go days ahead. We got, actually, I say that, we've got an inconjunct to the MC there. An inconjunct is frustration. And then it moves off, and then what's Mercury doing here? It's going to trine to the ascendant, and the ascendant moves every 2 hours. So then we go, oh, it's going to trine the moon. You see here? It's going to trine the moon on the 2nd of February. So you can sort of begin to see what energy we're dealing with. And then Mercury here is going to be trine to the North Node. So that will be useful to us. Let's see if that follows through. And then there you go. And then Mercury goes backwards. So as it goes retrograde, 15 degrees RX. And then we have Mercury here, 14 degrees, and then it's going to be opposition to the MC. So let's see how this plays out. But clearly what we're doing is we're going over something to go forward. And if we look at when we had the inauguration, actually, where was it on the inauguration? Let's go to the 20th of January. Jan, there. 20, I love the same 2021. It feels good. Even though where we're at. So we can see here that was the, so what was Mercury? Mercury was at 19 degrees. So we can begin to sort of see, and then it was a sextile to the South Node. So we're going to be going back over something. We'll see how that plays out. And it will be interesting. I like the sign of Aquarius, and it links in with my 3rd house as well. So you can see what house it's in for you as well, how that works out, you know, the flashes of insight in what area of your life that works out. Okay, I'll catch you later. Thanks for watching.